so good to go. All right, hi everyone, my name is David Svilacheski. I'm the animation specialist for... Oh, okay. I thought that was feedback then.
No, I was sneakily checking the live stream.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So I'm the animation specialist for media entertainment. Today, what I wanted to talk about is basically give you a breakdown of the animation industry and the film industry. So when I say animation industry, I'm talking film, games, TV, globally and locally as well. Then I'm also, after that, I'm going to shift tact a little bit and talk about some pipeline features that have, I think, helped to streamline and make things a lot more cost effective. Okay, so to start with, we're gonna get on with all the boring stuff, all the facts and figures first. So currently, well, in 2014, the animation industry globally was worth about $21 billion. By 2019, so we're talking about next year, it's estimated to be worth $40 billion. And I can tell you that we're pretty much on track, and the way things are trending right now, I think we're going to smash those numbers. India has about 300 animation studios, and about 70% of their revenue comes from outsourcing services. The UK has roughly about 5,000 people that are working in the animation industry. Now that figure actually, when I was able to get this number, was a lot lower than what it was. Now with Brexit, we're finding that a lot of studios are starting to pull out. So we're starting to look like that industry is going to contract in the UK quite a bit. In Canada, there is 420 animation studios. Vancouver, I think, last year announced that they have the biggest concentration of animation studios anywhere in the world. So that is definitely a hub right now. In the US, there is roughly 1,500 animation studios. Now, the animation studios in India hire, we're talking big studios, right? 300, 400,000 people. This figure here of 1,500, we're talking about studios of, anywhere from one person, two person, up to Ireland, Disney, so thousands of people. So we're finding in India that the studio numbers, the number of people in studios tend to be a lot higher, but the number of studios in America tends to be a lot higher, if that makes sense. Okay, and the animation industry in Australia, how bad is it? So the cultural industry in Australia, so everything that is arts related contributes almost 7% of GDP to this country. So we're not talking about just film and TV here, we're talking about anything that's art related. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised at how high that number was, because arts tends to not be supported a lot. And we contribute a massive amount to GDP. In 2004, we had one of the best years ever, where, and this is just for the film industry, it was a growth of 6% over the best year previous, of almost $1 billion. How you can break up the industry, where it's sort of, what is that? Sounds like someone's torturing a hot air balloon. So you can see here, New South Wales is roughly 3 billion, Queensland is close to 1 billion, Victoria is 1.3 billion, and that's sort of the breakdown of the industry. So globally, GST that's pulled from the arts industries is about $1 billion. How the sector itself breaks down, you can see here 21% is filmmaking, production and freelancing, 28% is production companies, 9% is education, and then various other things. You've got exhibitors, distributors, and so forth. And that's kind of how the breakdown of the industry in Australia looks. How how the Australian audience is consuming its media. So this here is more focused on online consumption, but there's some really interesting facts here. So, we've got, can sort of talk about all of this stuff here, but you can see most of that consumption right now is coming from YouTube, which when you think about the quality of a lot of that content, we're not talking about HD, we're not talking about really polished content, but almost 70% of consumption is coming from YouTube. There's a whole heap of facts and figures here. If you want a deeper dive on this, guys, come see me later and I can give you this slide. So the games industry earn about $100 million in export revenue, and there's roughly 5,000 people directly employed in the games industry. The Australian games industry went through a massive contraction after the GFC. Prior to the GFC, we had a lot of people employed, and something like 10 major studios, so THQ, Sega, all these major studios were here. After the GFC, there was a contraction and all those studios dried up. What we're seeing now is those big studios aren't coming back, or they're not in Australia, but we're finding that studios that formed after these big studios went are now generating massive amounts of revenue. So a studio by the name of Hipster Whale, you might not know Hipster Whale, but they made a little game called Crossing Roads. Now Crossing Roads has now been optioned for a TV show and movie, and that's now generating that sort of content. There's another company called Halfbrick. I don't know if you've heard of that guy, those guys. They made a little game called Fruit Ninja, which is the second most downloaded app, not just game, app in the world. And they're based out of, I say little studios, massive studio now. They've got a lot of money, and they're doing amazing work. So the point I'm getting to with that is that there's not the big studios like Sega and all those recognized brands, but there is a lot of money that's actually flowing through the industry. So that's kind of emphasizing my point here that I was just saying about the industry. And then the next slide here is talking about, well, just a bit of a breakdown of where the industry sort of sits. So unfortunately, when I grabbed these figures, the New South Wales gaming sector was quite strong with certain digital media grants that were going on. That's actually contracted a bit, but what I'm seeing now is a pickup in what's called serious gaming. So gaming companies are transitioning to doing things like education or training for civil industries, and there's a big growth in that sector right now. Where are people playing games? What platforms are they playing games on? Believe it or not, the humble PC is still the dominant gaming platform. There's a lot of talk about mobile and, say, Xbox and PlayStation. You have a look, mobile is the second biggest user, but still the PC is where most people or consumers are using and playing games. Where are game developers? Where do they come from? So the top four is the United States, Canada, United Kingdom and Australia. So Australia still contributes a massive talent pool of developers to this industry. How games are played in the family. So there's a lot of facts here, but I just want to touch on a few. 81% of games, 81% of females, mothers in particular, play games. The average age of a gamer is 32 years. It's traditionally kind of thought that a gamer is a kid, a teenager, but that's not what we're seeing. The average amount of time spent playing a game is roughly an hour in the house. I like this one down here. 85% of people say that games are less stressful. I'd have to disagree with that. Or maybe I'm just really bad at playing games. Okay, so The average incomes, what someone can expect as an animator working in the industry, is roughly $70,000. Now that varies quite a bit, and it varies drastically depending on what gender you are, if you're male or female. So this here shows the pay gap between males and females. You can see, depending on what country you're in, that pay gap can be a little bit, or that pay gap can be quite a lot. So this is something that, as an industry, we need to address. There shouldn't be a pay gap of anything, but right now there is quite a significant pay gap. So just a few, again, more facts and figures about freelancers, which tends to be where the bulk of the industry's workforce comes from. So you can see here, this 97% of all freelancers say that they've worked more hours than they've been paid for, basically. And I think everyone, whether you're a freelancer or not, can feel that. You know, they've experienced that before. Okay, a bit more of a breakdown of what you can expect to get paid depending on what department you're in, what level you're at. So you can see here we've got directors, cinematographers. An average for a cinematographer can be about 120. An average for a senior UX designer can be about 75. So there's a lot of, you know, it fluctuates quite a bit. A junior, let's have a look. A junior animator is, say, 20,000. And pay structure, how that pay structure seems to break down. So people tend to get paid, a large percentage of that is people get paid per project. Some people, a small percentage is on the hourly rate, and then an even smaller percentage is on the day rate. Me personally, when I was freelancing, I always loved to get paid on an hourly rate, because if I worked overtime, I got paid for it. You can sometimes get stung if you're working on a project rate. Okay, so just shifting tact a little bit here. This slide here is more geared towards people that are sort of trying to understand what's happening in the space. And there's this real de-evolution that's kind of happening in the whole distribution, money-raising space right now, which is why I put a little picture of Devo there. I also love him as a band. But you can see, you know, traditional revenue-raising avenues of say the big studios, that is being challenged by things like crowdfunding now. The digital distribution means that you no longer are reliant on the traditional distribution channels of, say, big cinema chains and that sort of stuff. You've got Netflix now. You've got, like we showed earlier, 70% of digital content that's consumed in the house is through YouTube. So you've got YouTube that you can get your content directly to an audience now. You've got Steam, the iOS app. There's so much going on. Engines to create gaming content or VR content. I mean, pretty much all those engines are free or next to free. So you can create that content for very minimal cost. And what does all this mean? I mean, you know, back in the 70s when the Atari came out, you know, it took, all the games we had were on this, and the setup to have this was quite cumbersome. Move forward to the 90s, and we've still got consoles, we've got PCs now, but then in 2008, the App Store came out, and pretty much everything we had from 1977 to 2013 can now be played on a device that you can have in your pocket. So it means that we're no longer restricted by the technical restrictions of having a big console or a TV or any of that sort of stuff. You can have that same experience this person had in 1977 with all of this and a massive cost outlay. That experience can now be shared on a mobile device while you're on the bus going to work or coming home from work. So revenue, where is revenue coming from? You can see here that revenue is rising in the gaming industry, but most of that rise in revenue is coming from online gaming. So that's not things like gambling. That's things like just any of the free-to-play or pay-to-play games that are coming out. The top 5 places where you can expect to get funding from crowdsourcing. So United States, not a surprise there, is the number 1. Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, believe it or not. Australians tend to fund a lot of crowdfunding ventures. We're the fourth highest in the world. Okay, so this slide here, I put this in because quite often I'm asked by students how they can get into the industry. And I'm also asked by people that are in the industry, how can I move around? I feel like I'm kind of pigeonholed a little bit and no one can see me. What I'd say to those people is that social media is a powerful tool to get exposure out there. Organisations are a powerful thing as well. So there's many organisations out there that focus on game developers or film developers or VR developers. Connect with those people and go to those events. Events like today's event, come to these events. There's nothing more powerful than actually meeting people face to face. Okay, so understand what you're good at. Be honest about your strengths and weaknesses and have a strong demo. The being honest about your strengths and weaknesses is a big thing. Like that's something that, I've seen people that have been in the industry for many years that struggle with that one. So get people that maybe aren't family and friends to critique your work. And they'll probably give you a brutally honest opinion of their opinion of how good your stuff is. And again, networking. Wow, I'm flying through this. Okay, some final thoughts here. So, like I said, I'm the animation specialist at Autodesk. I'm really focused on the software pipeline, new features that are coming out, how that affects production. So every year there's just so much stuff coming out. Just in the last release alone of Maya 2018, for instance, we've got advances in Human OK, geodesic voxel blending, which is a new binding algorithm for skin weights, Bifrost, which is a new water sim and smoke sim, and I've got a video that I'm going to show that. Mash, which is great for like commercials, all of that sort of stuff, and it's so much fun. I've been playing with that quite a bit. Shader effects, XGen, which I've got a video I'm going to show, SubDs, Olympic, and Modeling Toolkit, and the list just goes on and on and on. Honestly, I could talk for months about just new features. So this next video is a bit of a showcase from a little film that I was working on. And this shows, so it's just a little spanner crab, but the sand was actually done, so basically we, hang on, sorry, just let me go back. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Okay. So the sand was done using XGen, and we actually created 4 individual grains of sand and then populated the beach with individual grains of sand. So what you're seeing there is every one of these is a unique grain of sand, and we did that because some of the options that we had was using particles, and that just made our scene too dense. And then we're looking at other things like displacement maps, but because we're down at such a because we're down at such a macro level, all of that stuff didn't work. So we used this to create individual grains of sand, and it was really, really stable and easy to work with. So the next one here, this is another little film that we're working on. So this is, the water is Bifrost and the smoke is Bifrost as well. So the smoke is a new feature called Arrow, which came out last year. And then we've been doing a ton of work with Bifrost just to get things like foam and bubbles and all of that sort of stuff working. So essentially in this shot here, by using one effects tool, I was able to get water and smoke happening. Okay, and this next one is just a video showing you some of the things that you can see using MASH. Thanks to our friends at Mainframe. So all of that stuff you saw was done using MASH. So you can see for motion graphics, it's a very, very powerful tool and a lot of fun. And in fact, I'm currently working on a little thing for myself using MASH, where I've got a character walking and he turns into sand, and as he walks dissolves into the pavement basically. But it's a work in progress. So hopefully this time next year I'll be able to show that video of what you can do with it. So that's pretty much me. I've kind of flown through this. I have my contact details. I guess I'll leave it open to questions if anyone's got a question from what they've seen. Yes?
Where do you see the opportunities in the Australian marketplace for animation games development? Where are they being deployed? Who would you sell them to? How can you make money out of them?
Oh, well, right now I would say the civil industries is definitely a massive growth area for that. So last year I probably did a VR demo every week, and I'd say you could count on one hand the amount of people that I demoed to who were media and entertainment people. It was all civil industry. It was architecture, engineering, construction, defence, manufacturing. They're so hungry for it. And I'm actually seeing traditional game studios that are moving into that space now. So traditionally it hasn't been where gamers want to go, because they want to make like the next Call of Duty or whatever it might be. But if you want to make money, and where I'm seeing real growth in the gaming industry right now is absolutely in the serious gaming space. And then inside that gaming space, I'm seeing growth in VR is definitely one of those growth areas right now. I haven't really talked about VR here, but I do have a VR demo that a lot of people have played today. And you can, it's one of those things like when you show a video of VR, it's just someone wearing a headset looking kind of awkward. But when you experience VR, you get a true sense of where the power of that is, and it's that immersiveness of being in that space that no other experience can give you. And that's why it's becoming very good for education, for visualization, and for training.
And 360 video, are people using that and looking at that?
Yeah, absolutely. The space for that is more in advertising though. That's where it seems to be the growth for 360 video is happening. I can't say why that is. I've got my own speculative ideas of why I think it's that way. But 360 video opposed to VR is cheaper in some ways. It uses real life sort of photography. So anything VR right now uses a game engine, so you tend to get that sort of gamer kind of look to it, no matter how good your shaders and all that are. With 360 being used in advertising, it's being used to, say, sell a car or a holiday somewhere or an apartment somewhere. So you want that to look as real as possible. So yeah. Any other questions?
How long, or what do you think it would take to get the render quality in the 3D kind of project for VR to come close to what you're seeing on feature film?
I think there's some physical, technological challenges that we've got to overcome right now. So not just the rendering issues. Right now, when we're using VR, we basically have two screens that are rendering the whole HD image in front of us. The way the human eye works is that we only see a very small part of our world in 3D. Whatever we're focusing on is in high definition, and everything else from that little area bleeds off into a very low resolution. Right now with VR, we render the whole image in high resolution, so we're wasting so much bandwidth. So one of the things that needs to happen, which a lot of people are working on right now, and should be out relatively soon, is real-time eye tracking. And that real-time eye tracking will allow us to only render high resolution of what the pupil is looking at, which will allow so much more data to be pushed through. So that's one of the things that's probably holding that back right now. The next thing would be we need, it's this trade-off between what looks good and what plays in real time. And that's always been the universal thing with gaming. That's what they always struggle with. That gap is getting smaller and smaller, but now we've introduced VR, so we've now added another hurdle essentially to that. So I don't know, I mean, it's a tough one because what audiences expect always changes. So what was acceptable last year is old hat and unacceptable this year, and it's no good anymore. So our expectations are always rising. It's never a level sort of playing field. So I think, you know, we'll be here in 20 years' time, and you'll ask me that same question, and it'll still be like, we're almost there, maybe in another 20 years' time. But our expectations are going to keep growing. Exactly. Exactly. It's like that old, you know, the old thing with storage. Never say you'll never need any more storage on a hard drive. Because, you know, yeah.
We'll only need 128 kilobytes of RAM.
32 gigabytes is plenty.
Plenty. What could you ever need more than that? Yeah. So, any other questions? Nope. Okay, finished a little bit early. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, man.
It's never good.
And,
I like so.